Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is our Monday morning coaching corner with myself, Karen Jones from Rebels Compass, and Margaret Dennis from Evolve Coaching. Now, if you've listened to some of our podcasts before, we've covered a few subjects. And the one we did 2 weeks ago, we started to cover the subject of boundaries. Now, I know for myself doing coaching, and I'm sure it's the same for Margaret, that a lot of people don't even know what boundaries are. They have heard of them, they don't implement them. They very often don't even know where to start in their life creating boundaries. So that's going to be the subject today between Margaret and myself. So hi, Margaret, how are you?
Oh, hi, Karen. I am good. Thank you so much for having me on again. I really enjoy our conversations.
Me
It's
too, because they
always
kind
good.
of,
Yeah.
meander all over the place
Hmm.
and bring awareness. Now, the subject of boundaries has been huge for me in my life because I never had any. And like I
Hmm.
mentioned in the last video that you and I did, a boundary was a line, an offense that you didn't cross into, farmland or over somebody else's boundary line of their house or anything like that. Boundaries wasn't something that even came into my awareness until I was very, very late into my 30s, early 40s, and
Hmm.
figured out that I needed to start creating some boundaries, which took me another several years to be able to anchor in because my old patterns and programs were still running. How about
Hmm.
for you?
Same, same. We had boundaries set around us more like rules when we were kids, like,
Yeah.
if you're going to be late coming home, then call. But as far as setting my own personal boundaries, had no idea, A, that they even existed, or B, that it was something that I would actually be able to do.
Hmm.
Um, and mine, yeah, I grew into it as I got older. And the more I did more personal work and really deep diving into myself, the more I learned about boundaries and that how important they are. And they're actually a really great form of self care, which is, I know we're going to talk about in another episode. But boundaries are so important for your own sense of self worth, too, right? It's like
Right.
you set your boundaries around how you want people to treat you, what you want to get involved in. And it's personal boundaries. And I think people get really worried when they're starting to set personal boundaries, or they don't even know how to start if they've never done it before, because it's
Hmm.
not something that you grow up learning, saying, oh, personal boundary, you don't have to do that. You can say no. That's the biggest one, right?
Yeah,
How many times do all of us just say yes because we just say yes? We're people pleasers, or we're just, it's our, it's a feel like you should say yes, but saying no is actually setting a boundary.
absolutely. And I know for me, when I very, very first started to say no, I would come home and say to my now ex-husband, was I being a bitch? Did I sound like a bitch? Because
Hmm.
it was alien for me to say no. And I had
Hmm.
to find a comfort zone for me in a way to say no that felt right inside of me, which, and my vocabulary started to be that I created to create the boundary was, can I get back to you on that?
Yeah.
Because that gave me a comfort zone that I was actually saying, maybe, maybe not, but I need to go back and look and first of all, either check a calendar or check and see if
Hmm.
this was something inside of me that I actually wanted to do. So being able to use that vocabulary, which is kind of get back to you on that, gave me
Hmm.
space to choose
Hmm.
then whether it worked for me or whether I was overloading my plate, which was something that was a daily occurrence for me. It was I didn't just have one plate, I had multiples of layers of plates that I was constantly spinning, trying to keep them all from falling off the pole and
Hmm.
smashing into a million pieces. So that was a really good start for me.
I love that idea of sort of giving yourself a chance to think about it, make sure it's what's right for you, and check your calendar, and then be able to go back with a yes or a no based on your consideration. That's great, especially when you're just starting out
Oh,
learning
yeah.
how to set boundaries for yourself. Use it. Can I get back to you? It's the easiest, words that you can say. I think for me, where I struggled with boundaries was I have a big like FOMO, fear of missing out on everything. I think because I was bullied so poor, like a lot when I was a kid, I was excluded from a lot of things. And so as I got older, I just wanted to be involved in everything, and I didn't want to miss out, and I didn't want to be excluded from anything. So anytime someone said, "Do you want to do something?" Yep. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. But to the point where I really stretch my limits, and then you don't do everything well, right? Like,
Right.
especially when you're over committing everywhere. I was exhausted and I was burnt out and I was tired. Like, it was a domino effect as I kept saying yes to everybody. But I'll
Mhm.
tell you, the first time that I said no, I was almost shaking in my boots,
Oh yeah.
because I was like, huh, I really don't want to do this, or I can't do this. And it was like, no. And it was a question mark, like, is it okay to say no?
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, okay. And I was like, huh, okay, that went better than I thought it was gonna go.
Exactly, exactly. And it's
Yeah.
also that fear of, if I say no to them now, will they invite me back?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm. That was a big one for me, I have to say, because of the idea of not of being included. I always wanted to be
yeah,
invited back. I've grown past that now.
yeah,
For
yeah,
the most part, there's still things I'm like, "Oh, I'd really love to do that. I hope I get invited."
yeah. And mine was a big, I don't want to let people down.
Mhm. That's a
Because
big one
that
too.
was
Yeah.
part of my feeling, if I asked to do something, or I was told that something would take place on the weekend, or, we were going to go somewhere as a kid, or
Mhm.
whatever that was. And then when it got to the weekend, it's like, oh, we're not going anymore. And as a
Mhm.
child, you don't recognize that adult things take over sometimes. And with all the best will in the world, you can make a promise or a commitment to do something, and something else takes over. But as a child, when you hear that, it's like, well, here I am being let down again. Here I am being let
Mhm.
down again. So what
Mhm.
creates as an adult within me was, I don't want to let people down. So when I say I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. Even if I
Mhm.
have to move hell or high water to get there, I'm going to be there because I said I was going to be there.
Yeah.
So then that, again, that's that plate spinning. But what I
Mhm.
failed to do was um, run it through myself to say, is it something you can accomplish? Is it
Mhm.
something you want to do? Is it something that is within the time frame of everything else? And what are you giving up
Mhm.
of your own
That's a good one.
time to be
Mhm.
able to do this for somebody else? And I found when I started saying to people, can I get back to you on that? Very often, if I gave myself half an hour or an hour, however long that might be for me, and I call them back and either say, I can't do it today, but I can do it this day, or
Mhm.
yes, I can do that. Whatever was the emergency on the other end had already been resolved,
Mhm.
and that's one of the things that made me recognize that the emergency that somebody else had wasn't necessarily an emergency that needed me to do it. It's
Mhm.
just that caregiver that I don't want to let people down meant that I was always going to show up whether I was needed or not.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm
Smiling, so you
very
must have identified with that somewhere.
yeah. I think I was very similar too. I hated letting people down because I hated being disappointed too, right?
Mhm.
I didn't I I the feeling of being let down, and being disappointed is not fun.
No.
And I'm a huge caregiver. Like, I just very empathic, and I love knowing that whatever I'm doing is making someone happy and making them smile, or making their life easier. And for a long time, that was regardless of how hard it was on my life, right?
Mhm.
Didn't
Yeah.
matter what the impact was on mine, but if you're happy, I'm good. That's the people pleaser as well.
Yeah.
And that was very much a part of the result of the bullying too, right? Because then
Absolutely.
I learned to people please, because if I was pleasing people and doing my best and this, top achiever and all these things, then I would get some attention. And
Mhm.
so then you learn that to get attention, you create a paradigm or a thought in your brain that for me to get attention, I need to do what people ask me to do.
Right.
And that's a really hard one to break.
Mhm.
So for me, my litmus test when I am asked to do things, now sometimes I do say yes still without thinking, because it just sounds really good. And I'm still really excited. But I heard someone say once, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And I
Right.
thought, that's a really good way of resonating in your body, especially for doing something that might be a little bit outside of your comfort zone. But if
Yeah.
it's not a hell yes, it's a no, right?
Hmm.
Now, granted, helping your grandmother go grocery shopping might not be a hell yes, but it might be a really nice thing to do. But maybe it's not in the middle of your chaotic day. Maybe it's grandma, let's go on, on senior's day or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, I love the combination maybe of going with that. Can I get back to you on that? Checking where it fits on your set schedule, and also checking in and seeing, do I really want to do this?
Hmm.
I love that. What's the impact going to be for me? What am I losing out on, or
Yeah.
what am I gaining? Like,
Yeah.
where does it fall?
Yeah. What is it costing me? What is it
Yes. What
costing
is it
me to
costing?
continually say yes?
Mm-hmm.
Because it cost you something somewhere to
Mm-hmm.
continually say yes, 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 yes all the time. And we
Mm-hmm.
have these programs running within us. We have abandonment, we have betrayal, we have loneliness, we have um a fear of being left behind, a fear of not being included. We have all of these programs that are created from a very, very young age. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what we're constantly trying to avoid the pain of. So we end
Mm-hmm.
up doing things that might not necessarily serve us in the time. We're just trying to fill that painful need and not feel that pain of the past.
Mm-hmm.
So I know this is how we end up being in this cycle of do, 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 do. I'm just going to do it, do it, do it. And then
Mm-hmm.
you, like you say, you hit burnout.
Mm-hmm. You
You hit
do.
burnout.
You do. And I think for a lot of us, especially women, saying no is just so outside of what we've been raised to do, right? We've been raised to be accommodators and nurturers and, someone who will always do the things. Um, if a guy says no to you, that's okay. But
Yeah.
depending on the people you're with and depending on the situation, but I find that women are very quick to say yes. Yes, of course I'll
Mhm.
do that. Yes. And I don't know if it's like the martyr syndrome or something inside of us that's like, sure, I can do it. I've only got 10,000 other things to do, but I'll fit it in. I can do this. It's our multitasking like that we can do. It's really insane. But I think really questioning why we're saying yes. And
Absolutely.
I think giving ourselves permission to say no, that it's
Mhm.
okay to say no. The earth isn't going to swallow you up. People aren't going to like stop talking to you. And if they do, then you probably didn't want them in your life in the first place.
Mhm.
Um, but it's interesting the process of learning how to set boundaries and being prepared for other people's reactions if you're changing the boundaries around your relationships with other people.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
and that you're going to get pushback. So you have to be strong enough within yourself to say, okay, I'm going to set this boundary. I'm kind of expecting some pushback. What is my game plan if I get the pushback?
Mhm.
Right? Because
I
some of
think
us
when it
might
comes,
cave.
yeah, I think when it comes to creating a healthy boundary for you. So for anybody out there listening to this and going, okay, yeah, I've heard the word boundaries and yes, I need to make some. And how do I do that? So first of
Hmm.
all, a boundary isn't about control. You're not trying
Hmm.
to control somebody else. You are actually creating safety for yourself. And every single one of us are 100% responsible for ourselves. So by creating a healthy boundary, you are saying that this is as far as I'm going to go. If I go beyond this, it's actually going to cost me in
Hmm.
health, mental health, emotional health, whatever that is, more than I am giving you. And I think when we actually start to sit down and look at our lives, and like you said, particularly women.
Hmm.
So women, we have a generations back where women were taught to be They were just the care. I'm not going to use the word just, sorry. They were the caregiver of children. So they looked after the home, they raised the children, they cleaned house, they cooked meals, they did laundry, they might have tended a garden or taken care of chickens or something, whatever around the house. But the husband would be a farmer or go out and do what he needed to do. When he came home, there was a meal on the table. That's generational. That's programmed into us. And I know for myself, coming from the UK, that is still programmed into us, right? I know Canadians a little bit different in some areas, but being British, that is, you take care of your husband, you take care of your family, you take care of your home, you take care of your own business, right? But there's always somebody worse off than you. So you've got to help this person, this person, this person, this person, and this person to feel worthy. Oh, and by the way, while you're doing all of that, have a full-time job and still do all of the things that you used to be able to do. So very often women are spinning out of control. They are in total overwhelm. They don't know where to go to get support because every other woman feels the exact same way. So my question to you would be, what is it costing you not to create a boundary? So your boundaries are safety. It's not control. You're not trying to control somebody. A boundary is safety. What is my safe space? How do you feel about that?
I love that. I love looking at it like that because I think so many people they do look at boundaries as I'm trying to control something. And control is a really strong negative word, whereas safety is a softer positive word. Still strong, but it has a different connotation and a totally different meaning. And you're trying to keep yourself safe emotionally, mentally, physically. So, and spiritually. And by saying, no, I'm not going to make those 500 cupcakes for the PTA meeting. Honestly, it could be your sanity at that point, but you're saying no because it's how much of my time, my money, effort, what's it going to take away from me? That's a really simple situation. But what about changing within a relationship, right? You and your significant other, and you're going, no, I don't want to be talked to that way. I deserve to be respected. I deserve not to be yelled at because I made a mistake or whatever it is. But I think sometimes that's a really scary boundary to start to set within a relationship, especially if you're afraid you might lose it if you set the boundary. I think a lot of people, when they feel like they're going to start setting boundaries, when it is a safety thing, if you're getting yelled at for doing stuff, or you're getting abused or any of that within a relationship, it becomes your own personal safety.
Absolutely.
Setting those boundaries are so important.
They are absolutely.
So important.
Absolutely. So if you're in that situation, I would say to you, get a pen and paper, or look at all of the areas in your life that you are completely and utterly overwhelmed, where you feel like you're spinning out of control, or you do 15 hours outside of work on top of running a full-time job, or taking care of the family and running the kids to ballet or whatever the heck they have going on, and find out where you're being pulled in multiples of directions. And once you recognize that, the first question you ask yourself is, where is the safest place that I can make my first choice for a boundary? Now, if you have somebody in your relationship that you're tugging, they're not very respectful, or you have grown up or grown the relationship in where you yell and scream at each other, and you're worth more than that, but you have children that need to pick their toys up, or they need to make their bed, or they need to do their laundry, or they need to do the dishes. And because you're in mother mode, or guys, if you're taking care of children, it's interchangeable. But if you feel like you come home from work or come home from a busy day and now you're already looking, going, you know, I need to get the dishes done, I need to get the school lunches done, I need to get this done and this done and this done and this done. What are your children capable of doing for themselves? So the boundary now is, sorry, mum's not doing that, but mum will teach you how to do it for yourself, because now you're training, teaching responsible children to create their own boundary, to know that there is a boundary here. I can't just take. If you've got $100,000 in the bank, in your bank account, so let's say the Bank of Karen or the Bank of Margaret has $100,000 in, and every single day you give $1 away. You give $1 away. So you're giving away to doing stuff at home for your family, you're giving $1 away doing something for friends, give her $1 away, and it's 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. How long is that $100,000 going to last? Pretty soon you're going to be in the deficit. You're going to have nothing in your bank account. You're going to be in deficit. You're going to be in the red. And now you're chasing, trying to put dollars back in, but you're not refilling your bank account. And you're not refilling your bank account because you have no boundary. Because every single dollar you give away, you're not allowing to return back to you by a child making their own bed. Yes, you might have to tell them how to make it 2, 3, 4, 50 million times, but it's worth it. Or make their own sandwiches, or, you know, your significant other, can you do this please while I do this, instead of feeling like you have to do it all. And choose a safe place, because when you look at the bank account analogy, that $100,000 is only going to last so long. And when you first look at $100,000, you go, yay, I've got so much money or energy in my bank account. But when you replace the $100,000 for energy inside your tank, it's not too long before your tank gets depleted. And if you don't allow yourself time by creating a boundary in your life somewhere, and like I say, start with something simple. What are the simple things at home where you're not challenging someone in a big way, that you can actually start to reclaim those dollars or those energy pockets back, that actually fill your tank back up, because now you don't feel used, abused. You don't feel like everybody takes advantage of you. Nobody listens to me. Nobody, which is the vocabulary we use when we're in overwhelm.
100%. I remember when I set a boundary a few years ago, I was starting to meditate. I love meditating. Goodness, it's the best thing for you. I mean, I love being so grounded. But I was finding it that I wanted it to be really quiet, and I wanted to be alone when I was doing it. And I had a young daughter. And so she was always up around 6:30 in the morning, sometimes 7. I was like, okay, I'm going to get up at 5:30. I'm going to give myself half an hour of meditating, quiet, journaling, just to get my day started. No word of a lie. 3 days into it, she caught on that I was getting up early, and guess who started to get up early again? Like really early. And I'd be in the middle of a meditation. She'd come out and she'd want to turn the TV on because we were in an apartment. So I was like, no. So I had to set a boundary at that point. I was like, no, this is my time, and you're welcome to be awake, but you stay in your room until whatever time, 6 o'clock, quarter after 6. I said, this is mommy's time, and I need this. And I explained to her why. She was old enough to understand why. I said, I just need some quiet time to meditate. It's really hard for me to do when you come in and you turn the TV on or you want to talk to me. And I said, I want to be the best I can be when I'm with you, and this is going to help me do that. And so it happened a couple of times, but I remember a couple of times I was sitting there and I'd kind of see her out of the corner of my eye. She'd go like, oh yes, you're meditating. And she'd go back to her room. She'd keep herself very occupied. But that was a boundary that I had to set for myself, to know that I needed that time for me. Absolutely. In order to get through, like to really start my day off well. And she learned really quickly that that was the boundary, and that she would go, and it wasn't a hard boundary. It wasn't, I wasn't angry at her. It was just, this is a protected time that's mine.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I do with my clients is, if they're feeling really overwhelmed, is like, where can you get pockets of time throughout your day that are just for you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe it's you pull into a parking lot on the way home and sit there for 10 minutes and close your eyes, or
Hmm.
read a book, or meditate for 10 minutes. That could be a boundary that you're setting just within yourself. It doesn't even have to be boundaries with other people. It could be, what's the boundary for me?
Yeah.
I need this, right? I need 10 or 15 minutes between work and home because I know as soon as I walk in the door, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
You know, how do you set those boundaries for yourself? And again, that's providing yourself with the safety too. It's
Hmm.
safety in a way that it's protecting your emotional well-being, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
Because if,
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, we teach people how to treat us.
Hmm.
And I hear so many times that person treats me X, X, Y, and Z. That person does this to me. That person does this to me. But we claiming 100% responsibility for who we are, we
Hmm.
teach people how to treat us.
Hmm.
So when it comes again, like you say, to creating those boundaries of safety, the next question might be, how do I want to be treated?
Hmm.
And if I want to be treated this way, do I treat myself that way?
Hmm.
And if I don't treat myself that way, what do I need to create as a boundary in a safety place where I can actually treat myself that way so I can teach others to treat me that way?
Hmm.
Which is another good place to go, because we get so caught up in the dramas in our lives. We get so caught up in, everybody does this to me, everybody, says this to me, everybody. But it's how can I treat myself the way I want other people to treat me? And I know when I actually went through that questioning for myself, that was a big one, because I always used, I'm pretty kind to myself. No, I wasn't, because my internal conversation would rip me apart, tear me apart, and tell me that, people didn't like this or didn't like this. And
Hmm.
so you can create those boundaries for you where you create time for yourself to speak
Hmm.
positively to yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think a lot of the time when we are starting to set boundaries, a lot of our own inner stuff starts to come up, right?
Mhm. Big time.
Exactly along what you were saying, right? If you're like, if everybody's treating me this way, how do I think about myself?
Yeah.
And that's when you start uncovering, I'm not good enough. I'm not worth it. I don't deserve to be treated that way. And it's really important at that point to figure out where those thoughts are coming from.
Hmm.
Because just by being here on this earth breathing, you are enough and you are worth it. And you do deserve to be treated with respect and to live in a safe environment, emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. But if you're struggling with setting boundaries, it's a really good idea, like you said, to ask yourself, how do I
Hmm.
want to be treated? And
Yeah.
I actually proposed this to a client once, and I said, "Can what makes you enough?"
Yeah.
You know, and
You know,
it's
that internal world that we have will either be a safe space, or it will be the most destructive space that we ever have.
hmm.
And our internal world is the one that we cannot walk away from.
Hmm.
You cannot walk away from your
No.
own internal world. So when you start to listen to how you speak to yourself, and whether you're loving, kind, and gentle to yourself, whether you create loving space for yourself, whether you say no when no is appropriate, when you
Hmm.
say, I need help with this,
Hmm.
somebody help me with that,
Hmm.
instead of taking on and doing, and the internal conversation is, nobody ever helps me, I do it all by myself, here I am again doing this, nobody supports me, which keeps you in that cycle and not
Hmm.
creating a boundary that's a healthy boundary, where you, like you said, you can look at your internal world and see what's safe for you, to be able
Mhm.
to create a boundary.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so, I mean, we're going to talk about this on the next video, which is the areas and different areas in creating boundaries. But one of the
Mhm.
things that I will say, and one of the biggest ones for any of us is, what are your non-negotiable boundaries?
Mhm.
And you have to discover those within yourself too. What is it that is the line in the sand, and it's a 5,000 foot brick wall, it's 6,000 feet deep, you are not getting through that, over it, under it, no way. That is a non-negotiable boundary.
Mhm. And I just want to reflect on that too, that when you set those non-negotiable boundaries, you may want to ask yourself, how am I going to stick to those boundaries? How am I going to honor that boundary? Um, I know when I was way back when, I thought I had a non-negotiable boundary and it was crossed. And I let it be crossed for quite a while before I really said, no, this is my boundary. Um, and I look back and I know it was my own internal thing, right? Saying I wasn't worth it, and your own internal image. And so when you're having those conversations with yourself, if those thoughts are coming up, it's really good to be aware of those thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and understand that when it comes to non-negotiable boundaries, you need to have a plan. You need to understand what's going to happen if this boundary is crossed, because a lot of like some of us are really good with non-negotiables, right? They're like, nope, this is it. This is my line in the sand. You cross it, that's done. Like, I'm not going to, for myself or other people. But some people set those non-negotiables, but then they become negotiables
Yeah,
because of our own sense of worthiness.
yeah.
And that's a struggle that a lot of people will face when they're setting it. So just anyone who's listening to this, if you do have a non-negotiable and you've waffled on it, just take a step back and think about why.
Yeah,
Why did you waffle, right? And how important is that non-negotiable one for you?
exactly. And that's a good point, because I know one of mine, or is that if anybody does this in my relationship, that's it, I'm done.
Mhm.
And that was a line that was crossed a couple of times. But again, the only reason that you keep going back, or you keep doing what you're doing, is because of that limited belief and that self-worth
Mhm.
within you.
Mhm.
That people don't like me, or people are not going to invite me again, or it
Mhm.
always comes back to that. So by creating these boundaries, you're definitely going to start deep diving into what they actually mean for you, and the
Mhm.
internal conversation that you have on a daily basis that you cannot
Mhm.
walk away from.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and that's a challenge. And it's those things, those conversations that we're having in our head that we've had so many times that we're not even aware we're having.
Oh yeah, yeah, we're
Like
constantly used to
we're
listening to ourselves.
constantly exactly. And so if you're starting to set the boundaries, start to listen to the internal conversation at the same time,
Hmm.
because you'll want to know where your boundaries need to be
Yeah,
or should be, but also where the challenges might be. Yeah, it's it those diving into where those thoughts are coming from can be hard and can be scary. That's what Karen and I are here for. That's what we help people with all the time. So you don't have to do it alone.
no, definitely not. And
Mhm.
I never did it alone either.
Me neither.
Um creating those boundaries for me over the years that I first started to discover that I needed them,
Mhm.
because I was depleted, I was exhausted, I had all of those
Mhm.
stories running through my head. If I don't do this, I'm not going to be loved. If I don't do this, this person will leave. If I don't do this, this person's not going to show
Mhm.
up. If I don't do this, all of those stories, I had them all running through my head 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year, that I couldn't walk away from. And they're the worst arguments to have in your head, because you can't slam the door and walk away and say, I'm done. It
No.
follows you. You know, and I was very, very blessed that I've had people in my life that have been those accountability for me, which is like what you and I do when we're coaching. So to be that accountability person and say, is this something that you really need in your life, or what do you really need in your life? If you look at the plates that you're spinning, which plate are you willing to take away? And then have somebody ask you on a daily basis, or however often you speak to that person, saying, how's it going? Have you set that? Because like you said, people are going to challenge you. People get used to the way the energy to and fro, in how you treat them, they treat you. You treat them, they treat you. And when you change something, that's like, whoa, wait a minute. They've never done that before. And then they'll use every emotional trick in the book to try and pull it back to the way they used to always being. Which is a whole other discussion.
Yeah. That could be an entire different podcast for sure. But it's true, because the people, you get used to the relationships being the way that they are with the people around you. You are in a pattern of interaction, and it's something that develops between the people that you're with based on your personality and the way you are, and their personality and the way they are, and how they're used to interacting with people and how you are. And the more you behave the same way, the more that behavior gets confirmed as being the way that you should be acting, right? Like, it's a circular thing, right? I do this, I get rewarded for it, therefore I should be acting this way, so I'm going to do it again. And then, but it may not be the best choice for you. And so pulling yourself out of that pattern and taking a step back is really, it's really hard. We're not going to lie to you. It's not going to be super easy to make these changes, especially if it's new. But like Karen said, find the one that's the one that will provide you with some safety, but is probably the easier one to start with. Like, let's try there, get your toes wet, right? And give it a try and see how it works, and be prepared for a bit of pushback, be prepared for a bit of, your kids aren't going to want to make their beds. They're not going to want to make their lunches or empty the dishwasher the first few 100 times that you ask them to, but eventually they'll understand that you mean what you say. But being persistent is a form of creating your own safety.
And I think it's also a vibration of energy, Margaret. When you affirm completely within yourself, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore, you need to take responsibility for this, or take responsibility for, let's use kids as the biggest example, because that's usually where women get dragged all over the place and come out like a little drag, because they're trying to fix everything. So for kids, maybe it's like, okay, you're gonna have to make your bed every day of the week, and and changing that pattern. I think when I know for myself, I'll use myself as the example. I would get frustrated and upset, and just, for goodness sake, just make your bed. And it was also the tone of my voice. You get into that irritation, and kids will tune you out. They know, okay, mom's irritated, give her 5 minutes, I'll tune her out, like blah 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 blah. If I leave it long enough, she'll come and make it. But when you change that energy within your voice, when you have got to that boundary yourself, and you go, no, this is my clear boundary. No, that bed gets made. And if you don't make the bed, I'm going to strip the bed, and you'll sleep on the mattress until you're ready to make the bed. Whatever that is, but you are the one that decides, this is the time that I have chosen me. Because until we choose ourselves, there's nobody on this planet ever going to choose you more than you choose yourself. And that's a big thing to wrap your head around, because everybody, but I've got somebody that loves me completely. Yeah, they do. But until you choose you, in a big way, until you say, this is the way our relationship is, and it's not control, it's safety.
Oh, I love that. I do love that. The idea of it's safety. Hmm.
Yeah, it's not control, it's safety.
Hmm.
So how are you going to choose you?
Me?
Yeah.
Everybody. How is everybody going to choose themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a big journey, I know, for me to get to the point
Me
where,
too. And
yeah, I'm
I'm
setting.
tweaking them. I mean, boundaries
Hmm.
not cast in stone. They're
No,
tweakable.
they're very tweakable. They're
Yeah.
very tweakable. And you, as your kids grow, those boundaries can be tweaked for sure, right? More responsibility, and more collaboration on things. Um, but I think one thing to know is as you're building those boundaries, you're not going to be perfect at them right from the beginning. You are going to stumble along, and sometimes you may decide, okay, I can't give that boundary right now. It's too hard or it's too
Yeah.
much. Be compat, and then don't beat yourself up over it either, right? Like the last thing you need is to be doing the reverse, right? Of, oh, I didn't do it, therefore I'm a bad person. Well, you don't need
Yeah.
to add that conversation into your head either. Just say, okay, I've tried, I'll try it again. Just
Yeah.
don't give up. I think the big thing is don't give up. If it's important to you, make the effort, stand your ground, and set your boundaries, because ultimately, like Karen said, no one else chooses you more than you choose yourself. And that's not selfish at all.
No, it's not
You
self.
know,
We taught
if
that it
you,
is.
everybody thinks that it is. Well, not everybody. There's a lot of people, when you start setting boundaries, that's one of the big things that people will come back at you at. You're being selfish because you're not helping me. You're being selfish because you're setting this boundary. No, I'm looking after my energy. I'm looking after myself. And when I look after myself, guess what? I can show up as a much better person for those people that I've chosen to interact with and for those things that I have chosen to be a part of,
Mhm.
right? When you can make those choices of the hell yes, I'm doing this, you want to make sure you've got enough energy to show up as that hell yes excited person, not
Yeah.
the, oh, okay, I'm dragging my butt to do this. I really want to do it, but I did 10,000 other things that I didn't really want to do. And now I can't really fully enjoy and participate in the thing that I really did want to do.
Hmm. You know, listening to you, one of the things, one of the biggest wake ups for me where boundaries were concerned, was like you and I have talked about off camera, on camera, that I was a people pleaser. I would do everything. If somebody said, can you help? I was like, absolutely. I would change appointments in my book. I would do whatever I needed to do to make it work so I could help that person. And I was still living in the UK at the time and going to the spiritualist church there that I used to love to go to. And one of the ladies there was talking about boundaries. So I would have been in my late 30s, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking about boundaries. I had no clue. You know,
Mm-hmm.
for me, I was there. Quotation. I was just being a good person,
Mm-hmm.
right? Quote unquote. I was just a good person. I was helping this person and this person and this person and this person. I was just being a good person. Being a good person made me feel good until it made
Mm-hmm.
me feel exhausted. But that
Mm-hmm.
was the wanting to feel love, feel connected, feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told one afternoon, we were sat chatting, and all of a sudden she said, do you realize that when you're a crutch for somebody else, you actually do them a disservice because they're not learning their own lessons. They're not finding a way how to do it for themselves. And you think you can take them by the hand and do it for them. That hit me like a 2x4 up the side of the head. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, what? No, I'm just helping. No, actually, you're not. Yeah, I'm taking this person and doing it and whatever the list was. No,
Mm-hmm.
you are being a crutch for somebody else that is stopping them doing what they need to do so they can evolve and learn how to do it for themselves. That was when I got the big 2x4 up the side of the head, which made me do the deeper dive, which we
Mm-hmm.
talked about now, on what was the difference between helping and hindering.
Mm.
Where does helping come in? Because you're supporting somebody
Mm-hmm.
and doing it for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another word that came in for me. Where am I supporting, and where is it doing it for them? Because they're two completely different things. So that might help some people as well when it comes to, if you're a people pleaser looking to set some new boundaries for yourself, because that one was a tough one for me.
Yeah. I even struggle, and when I've been going through, like, I think that example is amazing, and I think you could use it, apply it to your children, right? When am I
Oh,
helping?
yeah.
When am I hindering? Like, teaching them how to do life. I know for me, running my own business has taken me a while, and I still tweak it and work for it because I have the corporate mindset, right? And I realize I don't need that doing my own thing. But one of the things for me was when I first started, I was constantly like, when are you available to meet? When are you available to talk? When are you? When are you? When are you? And I was like pulling myself in so many different directions because I just figured I needed to be out there and I needed to be available all the time. And very quickly I realized that didn't work. So for me, I now have it set in my schedule. These are the days that I coach. These are the days I do admin. These are the days that are mine to do whatever I need to catch up on. And I worked really, really hard to create a business where I have balance, right? Because I didn't have that in my previous jobs very much.
Yeah.
But I found that I was falling back into that. Ooh, when are you available? When are you available? And I had to catch myself. I'll tell you, I did it for a while, and then I was like, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm in control of my schedule." And you know what? When you set those boundaries and you say, "These are when I'm available. Which time works for you?" A, you're controlling when they're coming, but you're controlling the use of your time, which is
Yes,
creating for me a safety around my business and my time and my energy in my business,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And it's not, yeah, sure, we can meet Saturday morning, or yeah, how about we give a call like Tuesday at night, because that's when you're available. So for me, it was setting those boundaries around my work schedule because
Mhm.
I'm like, wait a second, I'm trying to create this life that's balanced, and I'm not very balanced at the moment.
Yeah.
And I still fall into the trap every once in a while because I absolutely love what I do. So I will spend time on weekends, but it's by choice, not out of necessity.
Yeah.
But it was true. It took me a while to go, no, wait a second, I get to set my schedule. It
Yeah.
was like a light bulb moment for me when I was like that too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. That's really good. That's really good. Well, thank you, Margaret. I think we've shed some light on the boundaries subject. I know when we come back, we're going to talk about the different areas, and that's a big
Mm-hmm.
one too, because there's quite a few different areas that you can create these boundaries, and it can feel overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
when you realize that you're a plate spinner of 75 plates and trying not to make one drop and smash, that you need to change this. So but for everybody out there listening to this, thank you again for listening to these podcasts. It would be fantastic if you can share these videos out far and wide, because you never know who you're going to support, who needs to hear this today. Perhaps somebody's been at home feeling overwhelmed, feeling depleted, feeling like they're alone. And maybe they just need to listen to this video and the subsequent ones that we've done, where they can go, okay, there is a solution to what I'm feeling, and that solution is actually in my hands. And if you need to reach out to either Margaret or I, please do so. You know how to get a hold of us. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. So before we go, Margaret, do you have anything to say?
It's what I tell people all the time. You're worth it. You are totally worth it.
There you go. So
Yep.
ending on that, you are worth it. You're worth the time. So we look forward to seeing you again. Please share this out. It is our great pleasure to be able to be in service and share this information. Have an amazing evening, everybody. Bye.
Bye.